Well, hello again, dear ones. Today we come to a conclusion. We come to a conclusion, but it's not the end. I need to take you on a little journey for today. And I think those in the room know part of where this is all heading. And I'm pretty sure there are some in the room that maybe aren't completely sure where this is all heading. And I think I'm in the latter half of that group, but that's okay. From the very beginning, religious science, the science of mind, has been an exploration of consciousness. And from the very beginning, what happened without doing a history class here, all that happened way back when in Ernest's day and after Ernest and all these different eras, if you will, of the New Thought philosophy, of the science of mind and its expansion across the planet. Well, there's been a lot of transitions and there's been a lot of endings and there's been a lot of launches and there's been a lot of celebrations and there's been a lot of truthfully withering away of communities, of ideas, of ways of doing things. I remember very clearly being at Mile High and being at part of the Mile High family and community uh, when they stopped doing the Lord's Prayer on Sunday mornings. And it was a big deal because it had become part of the culture, it had become part of their identity in how they express new thought. And what we also know is there was a newer, younger generation of folks that were coming into the community where that didn't resonate, where that didn't feel aligned, where there wasn't that energetic sharing of vibration and understanding and consciousness together. Today is the last day that this community is going to meet together on a Sunday morning in this format on Zoom. It is not the ending. It is what's happening right now. And what that means for me is, and what that means for all of us is that, well, we're in a transition. And so I'm going to invite you to imagine, if you will, the yin yang symbol. We've all seen it. We've all learned that there's a little give and there's a little take, and it looks like maybe one side has a little more here or a little less there, and there is the seed of the opposite in the midst of the great becoming that this symbol represents. But today I want us to look at the extremes of it. Because on one end, whichever side you choose, on one kind of aspect of that movement, there is the great big blob area where things are growing and expand and blossoming out. And yeah, there's still that little seed, that little bit of the opposite there, but the majority of that space is expansive. The other end, however, is where the ending happens. And it does, and there are things that do end. Because at a certain point, that really thin point, there's nothing there. There's no black or white. There is that space in the moment in between. And This program, this Zoom experience is in that point where it's time to let go and to release and to allow for that next great wave, that next great impulse, that next great expression of this community come bursting forth. And I want us to remember that in the polarity of all of this, one color does not represent good and the other color does not represent bad. You all with me there? This is not a battle of good and evil. This is not a battle of right and wrong. This is not trying to find some balance between my way and your way, his way and her way, the way and their way. There is a way. And what I know is the way forward is really hard to see when we're at that point of letting go. But it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. Some of you, I believe, are aware that later early in October, I will be at the Affiliated New Thought Networks conference retreat in Kansas City at Unity Village, and I have a very distinct honor of providing a 30-minute keynote at that event, and it's a really great, amazing experience for me, and I'm not the closing act, as it were. There's someone that will speak after I do. And then much later in the evening, we have a talent show where things get a little interesting. You can find those past episodes on the YouTube channel. The point I'm getting to here is that I connected with the woman who's going to speak after me. And I asked her, and we actually did an interview together. I said, "Do you know what it is you're going to be working on?" You know, a lot of ministers, we give a talk title and then we figure it out a few days beforehand, right? And here we are almost a month ahead, and I'm asking her what it is she is going to speak about. And she shares with me that she's going to speak about a book. The book is titled Transitions. And forgive me because I neglected to memorize the author's name. And it's a gentleman and a colleague, a female colleague, and the two of them have authored this. And the book's like 40 years old or something at this point. It's been around for a while. So the fact that this fellow minister shares with me that she's going to use this book and this teaching and this for as the basis of her talk really intrigued me. And I went and I ordered a copy of the book, and I've been digging into it, and not because I want to, you know, spearhead her talk or try to forecast what she's going to speak about, but just to have an idea of where the night is going to end. Because that portion of that experience will come to a conclusion. And I trust it will come to a rousing standing ovation type of conclusion for my colleague. So knowing that we will get to an end, I start reading into this book, Transitions. And it's a wonderful exploration of the various transitions that we have in our lives. And I'm not going to bore you with the whole book for the next half hour, but you can think back to when you were leaving your parents' home and moving out on your own for the first time. And you can think back to when the kids were starting to get old enough they were leaving the house on their own for the first time. And we can look at the anatomy, if you will, of transitions in our workplace and what we did in our early years of work compared to what maybe we did because we felt we had to keep the kids and food and clothes and all those things. And as we look back across our lives, we see that transitions are not just something we do. Now, there's a lot of books, a lot of people that want to tell you, well, you're 44, time for a midlife transition. Right? They might call it a crisis. You might call it a sports car, whatever. We might call it an outdated, antiquated idea of how we live through our lives. and how our kids are going to live their lives. But there's a lot of theory out there, right? What isn't theory is that every living organism goes through various transitions. What we label them, how we perceive them, how we choose to interact with those transitions. Well, for me, that's where the fun is in life. Because every great transition so far, and I'm going to trust this continues, every great transition has led me to something greater, something more. For quite a while, I've used an acronym for MORE. MORE is the movement of reality evolving. The movement of reality evolving. I want more. More what? I want more money. That means we're going to need a movement in consciousness to move the reality and evolve into a new experience. I want more in my relationships. Great. That is the movement of our reality as it is evolving out into the world. Nothing in that statement in any way implies that we're shrinking, going backwards, getting smaller, atrophy, ending, dying. We are the movement of reality evolving. But wait a minute, Robert, didn't you just say that we have to have endings? Yes, I did. Where I think we get it, where I'd like to see us move into a healthier experience of all this is to embrace the ending, not to let the ending be a surprise, but to embrace that there are these natural rhythms in our lives, in our art, in every part of us, and that the outcome is the next phase. So the ending is simply that thing that says, "Hey, wake up, got something new coming. Gonna be big and fun and display. We're gonna have so much of a good time because we got something new coming." I lived in Utah in the mountains for a number of years, and at 8,500 feet, the weather is different. Interestingly, I just saw a thing yesterday that there was snow on the top of Pikes Peak on Friday. Snowed on Pikes Peak on Friday morning, right? We all know what that means. Well, here in Lafayette or Arvada, it means absolutely nothing. Or does it? Because in 2020, I was also reminded, thanks to the wonders of technology, in 2020, it actually snowed at my house in Arvada on the 5th of September. Now, that year it didn't snow again until like November, but coming to my point here, we learn there are often those warning signs. Living back in Utah, we called it the shot across the bow. It was the storm that rolled in and laid a little bit of snow down on the ground and got just cold enough that you were looking for the lighter to light up your wood stove for the night. It was the shot across the bow that gave you the warning it's time to get your wood into your wood supply. It's time to finish up whatever outdoor projects you've got for the winter. You've only got so much more time before winter sets in. We need the reminders, we need the signs, and we need to be able to listen when things in our lives or in our community or in our organizations have served their purpose. And it's now time to find what's more, what's next, what the green growing edge of this sacred community might just be. So if you've been reading your newsletter, everybody goes like this. Yep, I read my newsletter every week, Robert. I love those little things you do, and it tells me so much about what's happening and what's coming. If you're reading your newsletter, next week Sandy and Jim will be leading our first spiritual living circle. It'll be at the church and at 4 o'clock and at p.m. Mountain Time. And what this is an opportunity, and we believe part of a movement to bring us back together in person every week. We're not entirely sure how all that's going to unfold. Remember about 15 minutes ago, I told you I might be in the side of the equation that doesn't know how this is all going to happen? Because I don't know how it's all going to happen. And the board doesn't know how it's all going to happen. So don't rush and ask them about it because we're allowing this to evolve and reveal itself. What we do know, however, is there are two primary desires that we've identified in this community that we want to nurture our experience of being together in person. That as much as we do and as much as we try, this these Zoom experiences just aren't quite cutting it. They're not supporting us in our transition. Not to a church that's ending, but to a community that is on that bursting edge of blossoming, of moving into a new phase and a new evolutionary vibration, a new evolutionary aspect of who we are. So today we're here, and once we finish the recording and all that, we'll answer questions and we'll share what we know and what we don't know and all that kind of stuff. But I want us to really be in a deep sense of trust that we can create a deep sense of sacred community, and it doesn't have to look like it has for the last 25 years. Because really, the last 5 years haven't looked like the first 5 years, and the 5 years before that didn't look like the second 5 years, and I don't think even in the middle, the middle 5 years actually all look the same either. This community has always been one of embracing the growth, embracing the evolution, embracing what comes next. We're just there again, that's all. I'm excited to see what comes next. So, Spiritual Living Circle next week on the 21st, I will be facilitating and leading an equinox service at the church at 4 p.m. Remember, all of what we're doing is in an effort to bring us together more often in person. And these are opportunities to bring yourself and some friends to the party. And yes, we've had a tradition around our solstice and equinox services, and due to some scheduling, and because we want to get back into in person on the third week, our traditional leader of these services will not be with us this time around. Doesn't mean that she won't be back for December or for next spring or for next fall. One of my favorite teachers, one of my first teacher, and all right, I'm just going to get rid of the one of. My first and favorite teacher in this reminded us often that we're making it up as we go along. The key to it all is making up in a way that works for you and doesn't hurt anybody else. If it doesn't work for you, let's make it up differently. If it hurts something or somebody, we definitely got to make it up differently. On the 21st, I'm excited. I haven't done one of an equinox service or a solstice service in a while. So I'm excited to be able to create something that is, for me, and I trust for you, will be fresh and new and sacred and engaging and help us through this transition to more. And then on the 28th, it's open mic night. So we're flipping open mic from the second week to the fourth week. That seems like an easy switch. And so now on the second, instead of the second Sunday being our potluck and open mic, that's our sacred circle. You can also go like this, say that with me. And then on the fourth week, we'll have the open mic night. Same parameters as we've been doing, 4 o'clock, come on in. We can eat first and chat and connect and meet. And when it feels just right, well, somebody will do a prayer. And when it feels just right, there'll be some music. And when it feels just right, we'll get a chance to share some readings and some prayers. And we encourage you. I encourage you. I love the creativity in what you all have been bringing to what we did this summer. Now we're just going to take it into the fall. And starting on the 28th, our open mic will be at the end of the month, and it'll be the anchor to our experience. And I'm going to invite you each month to bring what you learn. Bring what you experience from the first week to the second week in the sacred circle. Bring that to whatever the third week will hold. It'll be a little bit different of a. We're not going to call it out of the box anymore. We're just going to call it what is. And the fourth week, we're going to ask you to speak about it, to share about it, to find a reading or create your own. There has always been a sacred seed of community here in this church. Or call it a center, or call it a community, or call it a collective. Please don't call it a tribe. We can discuss why another time. And have fun with it. Be a part of this new growth. And honor that this is an ending. And we have made it, and we are going to make it sacred here even more in my prayer. And we can make this a sacred experience. And if it's sometime there's a reason or a need or a desire or a call to get together in a Zoom room and have conversations, then it won't be a Sunday morning experience, or it won't be what it is today. And even if it were at the same time, it will be something new. It'll be that little seed in the midst of that big blossom. So if you're in a safe enough space to join me in prayer, I invite you to please do so. Close your eyes, to imagine that yin and yang, not as a static image, not as white on the right and black on the left, or on the top or on the bottom, but as a movement, a gentle, a gentle circular movement of that yin and yang. Immediately recognizing that that mirrors the image, that mirrors the experience of the breath, the in and the out, and where does one end and where does one begin, and there is that little space, just enough space between the ending and the new beginning. And the ending always comes first. But the promise, oh, I sit in a deep sense of assurance that the new blossom is there, as near as the very next breath, as near as the divine. In this divine moment, I recognize the oneness of life that is emerging as my life, but it is emerging as the lives of each and every one here on this call. Those unable to be with us, but with us in consciousness. Those that may find this at another time, in another dimension, in another era, some archive off in the distant time frame somewhere, to come to this moment with us in consciousness and recognize the divinity, the oneness, the wholeness, the love, the light, the beauty, the truth, the health, the wealth, the well-being, everything, and the no thing that is the divine pouring forth as your life. You are a divine emanation of God's life. You are a divine expression of the one, and so is the person on your left and the person on your right. We are each collectively and individually God taking form. No question about it. It is in these forms that we get to celebrate the endings and the beginnings. It is in this form that we get to celebrate all that is emerging, and we get to celebrate what has got us to this point. Celebrate the years that this community sat in chairs in a building, the years that we didn't have this technology to connect, the various years that this community has been building itself in consciousness to arrive at this point, a point of light, a point of giving, a point of community, where we take that next step forward, where we take that next step into a deeper sense of physical connection with each other. And if somebody wanders in, well, when someone wanders in, they feel the love first. They feel that palpable vibration of love and family and community here in this that we call the Center for Spiritual Living Boulder Valley, or but whatever name it becomes called. Call it the one, call it anything, but call it home. A place where the consciousness, where we allow our consciousness to reside, a place where we allow our consciousness to rest, and a place where we allow our consciousness to grow and to be lifted up and to be supported, and to do all of that as well, to support others, to lift up others, to be part of the collective vibration of love and light and beauty. We are not here to convince anyone of anything. We are here as living demonstrations of what happens when you come to understand these principles and these universal laws and practice them. So that is the desire, that is the call, that is the word of the day. To practice the celebration, to practice the release, to practice the embrace, to practice it all. Every part of who we are, to bring all of that to this sacred idea in consciousness, in prayer, in community. So I am just lifting it all up, calling it all good, and letting it all be. With a grateful heart, I release this word into that creative law of life that cannot return this word void, that is already operating upon this word, already bringing all the right people, all the right connections, all the right resources and opportunities, all the right perspective, all the right consciousness to make this so. And if any word of this has vibrated with you in any way, I invite you to join me in an affirmation of truth as we say together. And so
it is.